Hello and welcome to designing a simple perpetual inventory system. In this video, we're going to cover the definition of what a perpetual inventory system is and the differences between it and a periodic inventory system. We'll talk about the functional requirements of such a system. And finally, we'll look at some of the resources that we'll be using. And I'm using resources here in the RESTful sense from a REST API design perspective. So let's look at the old way of doing inventory. So this is periodic inventory. This is what you may think of inventory or taking inventory as being. So customers will periodically buy products from you. So the customer brings a product up to the cash register and you check them out. Periodically then, the employee or the owner of the store will go and count all of the products that they have and determine which ones they need to reorder. So at that point, either your reorder is replenishing the products on the shelves from the stockroom, or if you're out of stock in the stockroom, then you'll order it from your supplier. And if there is no stock, then you actually lose sales. So your customer will just look at the shelf, see that there's nothing there, and leave the store. Periodically then as well, you'll receive shipments from your suppliers, and so you've got to have an employee who is unloading those and also updating the inventory counts at that point. So several different issues with the periodic inventory process. One is that employees must take time to count the products, so it's not very efficient. They have to record the changes. You also have a problem that you can have stockouts, and this is when a customer wants to buy an item but can't buy an item because it's not there. You don't actually detect these until after they happen. So customer goes to try to buy it and it's gone. And the owner of the store may or may not actually be aware of that even happening. Now you can avoid this by just keeping a whole bunch of inventory around and never running out. But that's pretty wasteful in terms of the amount of money you have invested in inventory as well. Finally, there's the question of what happens when you want to build an e-commerce store. So an e-commerce store is, of course, a shopping cart online. You have customers who are visiting your website. They see a product, they decide they want to buy it. The problem is that they see the product whether or not you have it available to ship. And so this can cause a lot of customer satisfaction problems if they try to buy something that you can't actually give them. So perpetual inventory. This is the new way, and by new I mean it's been around since computers pretty much. So customers still buy your products, and then you have a point of sale system or a cash register which automatically updates your inventory count. So your cash register here is actually integrated to your back office system to keep the inventory counts for all of your items. That way you always know exactly when you're out of stock of an item. You actually know the true stock levels at all times. So you also have shipments receiving, and when your employees unpack those shipments and put them in the warehouse or on the shelves, then there's typically a computer and a scanner that is recording all of that. So it replaces the clipboard basically by a computer system, and your inventory is all updated in real time. Occasionally you still have to do manual counts, but they're much less frequent, and you know when the stockouts are happening ahead of time. So let's look at different types of inventory that we're going to have to track in our inventory system. One is the quantity available. These are items which can be purchased by customers. So say a customer is looking at your website and they want to know whether they can buy the item, and there's a count of items that they can buy. Those are the quantity available. We also have quantity on hand. These are physical items that are in your store. Now these may not include items that are ready to go on a truck to be shipped to a customer. So this could actually, this would include items that are ready to go to a customer. So quantity on hand will typically be greater than or equal to quantity available. And then quantity on order is items that you have ordered for resupply from your manufacturer, but you have not yet received them. And finally, your quantity back ordered. And this is if you're going to allow your customers to order things that are out of stock that will be filled whenever you get the stock, then you can have a back ordered set. So here is just a visual representation of the same thing. We have our manufacturer here, or our supplier as a factory. They send things on trucks, and anything in here is considered to be on order. It might actually still be being built in the factory, but we'll consider those to be identical to things that are actually in transit. Then we have our warehouse to the right. We have certain items in the warehouse, and then we have items that we've shipped off to our customer. So our on-order inventory is everything that's in transit and everything that is in process at the manufacturer. Our on-hand inventory are all of the physical items in our warehouse or on our shelf ready to be bought. Well, technically they're not ready to be bought because some of them are ready to be shipped out. They're already spoken for. The ones that are available to be bought, to be ordered, are the available inventory. And then finally we have these sort of phantom items in our warehouse that are the back-ordered items. So those are items that are spoken for, that are not actually present. Typically you won't have both available inventory and back-ordered inventory for the same item, although we're showing it here in this diagram. And then once we put it on the truck, we don't actually track it at that point anymore. You could have a system where you're actually tracking and you're looking for delivery confirmations from your shipper, but for the purposes of this system, we'll assume that once it's actually been packaged and put on a truck to go to the customer, we are no longer tracking it in our inventory system. So let's look at some of the functional requirements. What does this inventory system actually have to do? First of all, we need to facilitate the purchasing of items. So customers can purchase items that are in stock. And so this should update our available inventory as the customer purchases them, should create a purchase order or a sales order in our system and be able to track it that way. Customers can also back order items. Now, not all businesses require this, but we're going to allow it in this case. So customers can order items that are not actually available. Employees can actually ship items. So this is putting it on the truck and sending it off to a customer. This is going to update our on-hand inventory. And employees can order a resupply, and this would also be called a purchase order. So this is where we're actually ordering from our suppliers. So we update the on-order available and on-hand inventory when we order this resupply. And we can also record receipts, which also updates all of these fields in the inventory. And actually, I guess the resupply, we are only updating the on-order. We don't actually update the available and on-hand. When we record the receipt, we do update the on-order, available, and on-hand. And then finally, employees can adjust inventory based on a manual count. As I said, sometimes you still have to count things. You have things that we call shrinkage. Shrinkage is things spoil, they go bad, we lose them, or you can actually have employee theft as well. So you tend to lose your inventory over time. So let's look at these different operations. First, if a customer purchases an in-stock item, we'll create a sale order for that. And this is for SKU or stock keeping unit number 101. So customer orders 10 of them, and so that sale is unshipped, and we'll also update our inventory for that SKU. So our available gets decremented by 10 and our on hand doesn't change. So if a customer back orders an item, this is for SKU 102, for which we have no available inventory. We do have 10 on hand, but the customer can't order those because those are ready to go on a truck to another customer. So what happens here? We create our sale order. The customer's ordered 20, it's unshipped, and we update our SKU 102 inventory to say that we now have 20 back ordered. So we've just updated the back ordered field. If an employee actually ships an item, then this updates several different fields. So our sale order gets updated to say that it has been shipped, and our SKU inventory gets updated to say that we no longer have 100 on hand, we now have 90 on hand because we created that shipment that went out to the customer. Doesn't update our on order or our back ordered. So now if we have a resupply that's ordered, say for SKU 102, then the employee is going to create a purchase order for that supplier and say we're going to order 50, and we'll also update our on order to indicate that we have 50 on order. So we just increment our on order amount there. And we also can have a shipment that gets received in the warehouse or in the store. So our purchase order P001 for SKU 102 has 50, and if we receive that shipment, then we update the purchase order to say it has been received, and we update our inventory to say we no longer have any on order. We now have 50 available, 60 are on hand. So at this point, we could start filling those back orders. If an employee adjusts the inventory, so this is employee is coming in and doing a manual count and discovers that even though it says that we have 60 on hand, we only have 56 on hand. So the employee will decrement our available and on hand by 4, and it'll create an adjustment record just so that we have a record of what that count indicated. So some of the resources that we're going to have to implement to build this perpetual inventory system include our user model. So we have two different kinds of users here. We have customers and employees, and they're going to have different abilities to affect these resources. So customers will be able to create purchases, but they won't be able to record a receipt or create a purchase order, things like that. Our employees will be able to do, receive shipments, send out shipments, but they won't be able to actually purchase items and create sales orders. So different things that we're going to need to track inside the system. We're going to have a SKU item, and these would be our current inventory levels. So we have an ID for that SKU. We have a supplier ID, so that's where where we reorder this item from when we run out. We have a name and a description just so that we can display something to the user as well. And of course we have our inventory levels. We also have sales orders, and we're going to go ahead and break that up into two different resources. We have the sales order itself, which is a single shopping cart or shopping basket, and we have a sales order line item, and this is for each different SKU you have in that sales order. We have a quantity associated with that as well. Sales orders also, of course, have a customer ID and a date and a status. We also have purchase orders. These are orders from our suppliers that we've generated. Same idea here. If we order multiple SKUs from the same supplier, then we're going to go ahead and have multiple line items on that purchase order. And then finally, in order to allow us to keep track of everything, we have a ledger or a ledger entry resource. So the basic idea is we have our SKU item, our sales orders, or sales order line items, our purchase orders, or purchase order line items. All of these we can almost consider a cache of our ledger. So our ledger is the system of record here. We have an ID of each ledger entry. We have a user which created that ledger entry. We have a date, and we have the type of ledger entry. So maybe it is that we had a sale. Maybe it is we received a shipment. Maybe we generated a purchase order. Maybe we had a manual adjustment. So those types would be recorded there. If there's an associated sales order or purchase order and line item, then we'll go ahead and record those as well. And we'll also record the adjustments to quantity available, quantity on hand, and quantity on order, and quantity back ordered. So what this ledger, again, allows us to do is reconstruct all these other resources if we need to from scratch. So those are the resources that we're going to be developing as we build out this REST API and this REST system for perpetual inventory. So in this video, we have covered a few different things. One, we've talked about the differences between periodic and perpetual inventory. We have talked about the operations and e-commerce perpetual inventory system needs to support, particularly in the case of allowing customers to have back orders. And then finally, we covered the resources that we'll use to implement our perpetual inventory system. So thanks for watching this video. I hope that you liked it. And if you did, please go ahead and like and subscribe, and we'll continue on in our REST-driven API and system design. Thanks.